Hey everyone, so today we're going to do a little application with the Particle Photon module. What we're going to do is we're going to monitor a temperature sensor, and then if that temperature sensor reads too high or too low, then we're going to pulse a buzzer on and off. So what we have is, this is our setup, and it consists of 4 parts. The first part is an SI7020-A20 temperature sensor mini module. So that's going to act as our temperature sensor. It's also a humidity sensor, but we're not using that portion in this application. The second mini module that we have here is a PCA9536 I2C BZ. BZ as in buzzer. Basically it has a buzzer on it as well as 3 GPIOs. Then after that we have a Spark I2C interface board, and this is basically a board that the Particle Photon or Spark core plugs into and gives it an I2C connection so that we can chain on all these different sensors and whatever else you might want to add in the future. And of course the fourth thing that we have here is a Particle Photon module. The first thing that you need to do is you need to set up your Particle Photon module and make sure it's associated with your Wi-Fi network, which has internet connection. After that, you need to make sure the Particle Photon module is associated with your Particle account so we can flash firmware to it. If you need information on that, you can head over to docs.particle.io. They have some really great documentation for setting up your Particle Photon module, as well as a whole lot of other resources. So once your particle module is associated with your Wi-Fi network, it has internet connectivity, and is associated with your account, we can go ahead and connect our USB cable to it. All we're using this USB cable for is to basically power our setup. It's going to power our Particle Photon module, and then it's also going to power the 2 mini modules connected to that. So after we're done with that, it's time to put some firmware into the Particle Photon module. So to do that, you're going to want to head over to build.particle.io/build. And more than likely here you will be prompted to sign in with your Particle account, so you'll want to do that. Once you are signed in, you'll be taken to the code section of the site. You can navigate the site over here on the left bar. There's a flash button to flash firmware to the module, a verify button to verify your firmware, save button to save your firmware. This takes you to this code area here. If you click it again, it expands over here and you can see all your different applications. You'll see I have several. This is the libraries tab. Then you got the docs, which will take you to docs.particle.io. Devices. You'll want to click there and you'll want to make sure that your device is selected. This is my controller right here, I2C generic. I can see by the indicator to the right here that it is connected to the particle cloud. So I'll want to make sure and star that so I know I have that one selected. You only have to star it there if you have more than one device on your account. So that's a quick rundown here. At this point, we're ready to actually flash some firmware into the module. The firmware that I'm using for this project has been contributed to the Particle IO build site under the library section, so you can just click on libraries. And mine will be a little bit different because I've contributed some libraries, so it has a My Library section. If you don't see that, don't worry. You can scroll down here, they'll have official libraries, and then there will be community libraries. In community libraries, to find this application, you'll want to type in temperature_alarm. And you'll see that it doesn't show up for me, and that's because I am the contributor for this library, so mine shows up over here. But once it does show up down here after your search, you'll want to click on it, and you'll see a spinner here. And after a few seconds, you should see the library appear. So once the library is up, you'll want to make sure that you have this application tab selected. And then over here on the left side, if you scroll down, there will be a button that says Use this example. So we'll click that, and you'll see down here it forks the example, and it creates a new application in your code directory. called application, which of course you can rename to whatever you want. So once we've got this loaded up, let's kind of take a look at what's going on here. So we can see an include statement up here, and this is basically just including the library over here, which allows us to control the buzzer and to control the temperature sensor. Those objects are instantiated right here with these two declarations. So we've got one object here, which is the temperature sensor, which of course lets us read the temperature, and the other one is the buzzer, which of course lets us control the buzzer. Then we've got a few variables declared up here. We've got alarm limit, which is a float set to 0 by default. We've got a boolean for high limit, which is set to false, and a boolean for low limit, which is set to false. We also have a function declaration here, which returns an integer called setAlarmLimit, which takes a string argument. And then down below that we have another variable declared here. It's a double called tempf, which is set to 0 by default. So here in setup, we're declaring a variable on our particle account called officeTemp, and then we're using the tempf double as the variable for that cloud variable. And then here we're going to say if not buzzer.initialized. This is basically calling a function on the buzzer object to initialize it, and it's passing it 0 to set all the channels to outputs. And then we check to see if that didn't work, and if that didn't work, we print out a in the serial log. Then we declare a function on the particle cloud called alarmLimit, and we call our setAlarmLimit function. And this is going to allow us to set what the temperature limit is, and whether we want to monitor when we're above that limit or below that limit. And then down here in the main loop, essentially what is going on here is we are using the temperature sensor object to get the current temperature, and we're setting that tempf variable on the particle cloud to that so that we can actually see what the temperature is. Here we're checking if high limit is set or if low limit is set, which are those two booleans. If high limit is set, then we go through here, we do a printout in the log, and then we see if our temperature is above the alarm limit. If it is, we turn the buzzer on, we wait 100 milliseconds, then we turn it back off. And then down below all this is a delay, so what you would hear is a 100 millisecond buzz every second. And if it's not above that limit, then we need to make sure that it's off, so we do that there. Same thing with the lower limit. We just basically see if our temperature is less than that alarm limit. If it is, then we pulse the buzzer. So that's pretty much all that's really going on in the main loop. And down here is our function that's declared to the particle cloud, which takes a string argument. And essentially what we do here is we take the argument, we split it by a semicolon, we check the first part to see if it says high. If it's set to high on the first part, then we know that this is a high limit alarm, and we need to check to make sure that we're below that limit. If we're not, then we turn on the buzzer. So if it's high, then we set high limit to true, set low limit to false, and we set our alarm limit to the second part of that argument. And the same is true for low. If the first part is low, then we set our alarm limit there. So all we're doing here in this function is we're setting a global boolean, and we're setting a global float for our alarm limit. And that's really about all there is to this firmware. Since we're using this example, a lot of the code is actually in the library itself, which you can take a look at here. We can see all the includes here. A couple of them are for the buzzer. This is basically sending all the I2C commands to control the buzzer and initialize it. And of course it has a header file, and then we have the temperature sensor, and these are all the commands to basically get the temperature from the sensor in a human readable value. And then we have this file here, which basically just declares those two classes. So at this point, we can go back to our code, make sure that we're on, the application was just created here. We want to make sure that's selected, and when it's selected you'll see this flash button. Before we do that, we want to make sure our device is selected, and once it is selected we flash the firmware to it. And after you flash the firmware, you'll see the magenta light flash on and off, and then the green light will flash since it's associating back to your Wi-Fi account, and then you'll get a glowing cyan LED letting you know that it is connected to the cloud. So that's it for the firmware. That's all that we had to do. I mean, really, the short and sweet of it is you go to the library, you search for that library. Once you find it, you click use this example, make sure your device is selected, click flash. That's it. So once our firmware is running, we can actually start interacting with it. You can do that through mobicle.io. Go to mobicle.io. It's going to ask you to sign in with your Particle credentials, and then it's going to give you a list of all your devices. I have my device that I'm working with today called I2C generic, so I can click on that. And here we'll see that variable that it's publishing for its current temperature, which is set to, right now it's 75.5 degrees. And it has a function called alarm limit. So we can click on alarm limit here and we can enter in our argument for that. I'm going to set this to be a high level temperature alarm. So I'm going to type high and then a semicolon and then the temperature I want to trigger the alarm. So we'll say 76.00 degrees. And we'll click send. Now if you open up your serial monitor to the Particle module, on Mac it's just Particle serial module. If you already have the Particle CLI installed, which documentation on that is at docs.particle.io, we can open that up and we can see that we're hitting that if statement on the high limit. So what we're seeing here is evaluating high limit, current temperature is 75.5, alarm limit is 76, alarm trigger 0, so 0 is false. So that's why we're not getting an alarm, because we're below the limit. So if we go ahead and just heat up this sensor, you'll see that I get a buzz once per second. And that will continue to buzz like that until we get back below the 76 degree threshold. So if I just blow on it here, having a little trouble getting it cooled back down, we can actually correct that. If we want to turn it off, we can just set our limit a little bit higher. We just set it up to 78 and click send, and you'll see that it stopped buzzing because I raised the limit. I was having a little trouble getting it cooled off there. But everything works. This is pretty much it for this application. It's a really cheap, it's a really simple application if you want to kind of get your feet wet in what ControlEverything's offering. Everything together here, you're talking is a pretty cheap setup of components. Of course, you can purchase everything from ControlEverything.com. We'll give you everything that you need. So that's it for this application. I hope you all enjoyed it. There's a link to the GitHub repository here, so you can go there and you can check out the code for this application, and you can make modifications to it in any way you see fit. So that's about it for this. If you all have any questions, just let us know. Thank you.